If you were drawn to this reading, then you are psychic and you have at least one of 4 clairs, perhaps even more than one. All you need to do to find out which one it is pick one of these 4 piles or more than one pile, and whichever one your intuition is drawn to, that is your reading. So let's look at these cards. The first card, pile 1, is the High Priestess. What is something that you just instantly know? The second card is pile 2, Strength. What do you feel in your body when you look at this card? What emotion is within you right now? Pile 3 is the Hanged Man. What do you see? What is your eye drawn to? What's in your mind? What vision do you have? And the final card is pile 4, Judgment. What do you hear? What words are in your mind? Whichever pile really triggered your intuition that stood out to you the most, that is your reading for today. You may have more than one, but once you know your pile, you can scroll to that part of the video, or you can go into the description and click the link to that section. So let's go ahead and get started. Hello, pile 1, my High Priestess pile. Welcome to your reading. If you picked this card, you have claircognizance, which is clear knowing. This is knowing something without fully understanding how you got to that gut sensation, that gut feeling, because there aren't rational steps that led to that knowing. And you may have really discredited yourself as a psychic before because you seem to know things, but you don't understand how you arrived to that conclusion. And whenever you shared these perceptions with someone before, they either assumed it was some sort of academic knowledge, or because they also couldn't figure out where you determined that conclusion, have just said that you're wrong and then just moved on. But you do have a psychic ability, and it is a wonderful ability, and I really want to get into that today. So let's first start by pulling 3 cards from the tarot deck for everything you need to know about your psychic ability. Spirit, what does pile 1 need to know about their psychic ability? We have the Ace of Cups reversed. So you have probably felt very depressed about this psychic ability before because, again, you don't understand how you arrived to those conclusions, and you have probably de-supernaturalized your ability. And normally people have the problem of making it too supernatural, but you're actually the opposite. You only see your conclusions as academic or intellectual assertions, which is fine. You can use it that way. I think most people tend to supernaturalize these psychic abilities too much. They don't seem to recognize that it is a normal part of their life. But because you don't recognize the spiritual elements of this psychic ability, you can't use it in an intuitive way. And at the end of the day, this is an intuitive ability. The second card is the Four of Coins reversed. This is not a traditional conservative belief. It is something that people will challenge you on. And so because of that, you are afraid to talk about it. And because you have probably surrounded yourself, at least in the past, maybe in the present, with people who aren't spiritual themselves, you can't talk about your beliefs, your conclusions, your perceptions. And this means you're hiding some important part of yourself. Your third card is the Lovers reversed. This is actually quite damaging because you need to be around at least one person who truly appreciates the way that you understand things, the way that you apply your psychic gift in life. And I think you may be tempted to default to people who are very academic or intellectual, and that's not a wrong thing to do. But you could end up in a situation where your social circle or your romantic partner really discredits your beliefs because they are trying to get down to the bottom of how you arrived at that conclusion. And so I really encourage you to have someone spiritual in your life who will recognize your psychic ability as a psychic ability, because you're not going to be able to improve it. You aren't going to be able to determine when you are using your psychic ability versus your intellectual ability, because those are actually two different things. And I think right now, most of the people who are listening to this particular message don't recognize when each one of those are happening. So let's figure out first how we can arrive to you using your psychic ability and you using your intellectual ability, because they are different. Let's pull 2 cards for each of those. Spirit, how can pile 1 know which ability they're using? How can they know? And then I have now just figured out why I was drawn to the High Priestess for this particular psychic ability. So the High Priestess traditionally is this priestess in front of 2 pillars, Boaz and Joachim, but it's a dark pillar and a light pillar, and the dark pillar represents that yin feminine energy, that mysterious energy, and the white pillar represents a more masculine sun ego oriented energy. And the sun ego oriented energy is your intellectual ability, and the feminine dark energy, that mystery, is your intuitive ability that you don't understand how you arrived at. So let's figure out more about that. So your intuitive ability, the 3 of Swords reversed, this is a card of clarity. So you'll know that you are using your psychic ability when you are absolutely certain of your conclusion. You just know you're right. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter what evidence someone shows you, you know you're right. That is when you are using your psychic ability, because you are seeing the answer that no one else can see because they are defaulting to an evidence trail. But sometimes the evidence that they gathered actually isn't accurate. It is their perception of reality, but it's not actually the answer. The other intuitive element is the 8 of Cups. You aren't emotionally attached to the result. So we often see this with tarot and astrologers. They will predict often presidential elections as an example, but they always seem to pick the answer that they want to hear. You are not that way. When you use your psychic gift, you are figuring out answers that you have no emotional connection to. You just know it is just an awareness you have. It's not necessarily a physical feeling, it is just this knowing. So that is how you know you are using your psychic gift. You aren't emotionally attached to the answer, and you have a very clear awareness that that is the answer. Now, when it comes to your intellectual reasoning, we have the fountain. It comes from this tradition, right? This goes back to the 4 of coins that I pulled before. Your psychic ability doesn't have a lineage and evidence trail, and your intellectual ability does. You're going to be able to figure out where that answer came from. Maybe you don't know all the steps to get there, but you're able to name at least one, and you're able to attribute that step to your answer. You know that is informing your conclusion. The next card is the Death Reverse card, avoiding transformation. So when you use your intellectual ability, you are unchanged by it because you are changed through the discovery phase. You're not changed through the answer phase. It is a bit like the scientific method where you go through different processes to arrive at a conclusion, but once you get to that conclusion, you've already kind of agreed with it, right? The process actually makes the answer, whereas your psychic ability, the answer makes the change. So even if you weren't emotionally attached to the answer, you would accept that it's true. But with an intellectual conclusion, you would already be emotionally attached to it because you went through the process to discover it. It is like when somebody is writing an essay, even if they didn't agree with the essay thesis beforehand, the process of writing the essay makes them be persuaded. So you aren't persuaded by the answer, you're persuaded by the process. With your intellectual conclusions, with your psychic conclusions, you aren't persuaded by the process, you're persuaded by the answer. So that's something to consider when it comes to using your psychic ability. Now let's pull one card from the Work Your Light Oracle deck to figure out how you can best apply this psychic ability in your life. Spirit, how can pile 1 best apply their psychic ability? How can they use their claircognizance? The first card is the Dance with Life. Do something with your energy. Specifically, do something with your answer. So Spirit gave you the ability or preference to use claircognizance because having the obvious answer, the clear answer, is supposed to do something for you in your life. So let's say, for example, you just knew who to vote for in a political election and you don't understand why you have that answer. Maybe because you even disagree with the answer, but you know that's who you're going to vote for. And so you vote for that candidate, win or lose, but you knew you had to vote for that candidate for a reason. And that is because Spirit is using you as an agent of destiny, someone who helps change the world. And so the answers you receive have a purpose. So when you get an answer, small or big, consider how you're meant to use this information because you probably aren't given a lot of psychic answers for every little thing in your life unless you have a very deep and profound ability. But when you're given these answers, don't just accept that you have that answer. Ask how you are supposed to use it. And I think that would really start changing your life. So let's use a small example. Imagine Lisa is going to the grocery store and she sees this bag of chips and it has an ingredient she's allergic to, but she just knows she has to buy that bag of chips. So she buys it. She knows she's not supposed to eat it because it would make her sick, but she buys that bag of chips and she takes it to her house. A week later, her cousin has a surprise visit because they're in town and they see those bag of chips and they are thrilled because it is their favorite bag of chips and it really helped them during a bad day after a very long day of travel and it just made them feel at home, it made them feel comfortable. And Lisa realized that her having to buy that bag of chips, her just knowing it was important, later down the road was actually to make someone else feel better. She knew it wasn't to make herself feel better. She knew it was to make someone else feel better. And that is one way that you can apply your claircognizance. You consider how it is going to be used and you wait for that event to occur. But let's go ahead and pull 2 cards from the Wisdom of the Oracle for anything else you need to know about this psychic ability. Spirit, what else does pile 1 need to know? What is important here? By the book. So by the book means following the rules, following the guidelines. Now, obviously, you aren't following the book intellectually, but you are trusting the universe that the guidance you receive, the psychic answers you receive, have a purpose. And you need to create a process for how you're going to use these abilities. First, you need to figure out how to determine the difference between psychic and intellectual, because you're going to use these two answers in different ways. But once you know it is psychic, it is something that you just know and you don't have an emotional attachment to, then you ask yourself, what does this mean? And then you ask yourself, do you apply this immediately or do you await for the event to happen? Because sometimes you get an answer and you know you need to act on it immediately. And others, you don't know yet when you're going to use that answer, but you file it into the back of your mind and you wait. That is an example of a 3-step process for how to use your psychic ability. Because if you don't have a way to apply it, it's just going to go right on by you and be completely useless. The second card is go the distance. You can improve this ability. And I want you to keep a journal. I want you to keep a journal of all of your psychic intuition, all your psychic answers that you receive. And then I want you to write down how you use them. In the beginning, you're going to have a lot of glimpses of inspiration and you're going to do nothing with them. And that's just because you are a beginner. But eventually, you are going to start noticing which particular glimpses of insight are the most important for you to use and how you use them. You may even find that some things that you learn aren't that important to you and you just let them fly by, and you will only get those flashes of inspiration that are actually important to you, that are actually relevant to you. But for you to be able to actually develop that gift, you need to measure your insight and then start applying that insight. If you don't measure it, you're not going to improve it. So you have to measure it. You have to measure it. Let's pull one card from the Psychic Tarot deck as your last card today. Spirit, what is your last message on claircognizance for our audience? What do they need to know? We'll do 2, actually. The first card is intuition. It is intuitive. You are able to use it for divination. The second one is the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra is all about what you desire. It is basically your reproductive organs. It is deep within you. And one thing to consider in what this means for your psychic ability is that what you desire is going to reflect in the answers you receive. You aren't just going to receive answers and psychic insight for things that are irrelevant to you. You are going to receive answers that are personal for you. And these things you don't necessarily have to share. You can share them if you want to. You could also share them with a romantic partner. You could probably find that you get a lot of insight in romantic relationships about your partner, especially after intimate times. But really understand that what you desire is going to be reflected a lot in your insight. And so I think that Spirit wants you to use it mostly for personal reasons. So some other things that I want to talk about before we go today is how you can use your psychic ability, how you can use it in a practical way, in a spiritual way. And so generally speaking, you can use it to understand things. you're able to reflect, you're able to solve problems. You can't exactly explain your reasoning, but you're going to have an answer, and that's a good way to do things quickly. But specific divination techniques you can use include astrology, numerology, tarot spreads in particular, because it is more logical, it is more top level, top down. I Ching and timing and those sort of things, but one of the reasons why you have more academic and intellectual divination practices is that these require a lot of information. It's not just something you do in the moment, it is something that is organized in your mind. And that's simply because you are able to store more information than the average person. Astrology, for example, it is more algorithmic, but it requires thousands of hours of study because there are a lot of complicated techniques. And if you have claircognizance, you are going to be able to store that information longer and use it in a way that is practical. And so even though you're more psychic than intellectual, you do need to understand that intellectual is a way that you can apply your psychic gift. You're going to be able to know the conclusion, and then you can prove your work. Maybe you just know when you look at somebody that they are meant to do a particular career. You just know it. And so you look at their astrology and you know what to look for. You know what you need to prove, and that's what you do. Now, when it comes to tarot, claircognizance is going to be represented in someone who basically instantly interprets the cards. They aren't touching them, they aren't looking at them, they aren't telling you that they're hearing intuitive messages. Instead, it just seems like they know the answer. And that is how it works. You may see some tarot readers do this. It's not what I do. It's because I'm touching the cards. And you may not be able to tell the difference sometimes by someone who's touching the cards and someone who just knows. But it's a very intangible psychic clair, and it's something that I don't have, so I can't understand it in the same way that you do, but it is something you need to practice because it can't be explained. You have to practice it and you have to apply it. But pile one, that is what I have for you today. If you resonated with this reading, be sure to like and subscribe for more. You can also book a private tarot reading in the description. There's a link for you there. But otherwise, pile one, I encourage you to use your psychic gift. You are going to be able to improve your life so much, and you have the ability to use really complex divination methods if you would like to use those methods. So otherwise, pile one, I am sending you my blessings. Hello, pile two, my strength pile. Welcome to your reading. Your card, the Strength, means that you have the psychic ability of clairsentience, and this is being able to know things through touch or feeling. Now, this is the one that I have, and it's why I am attracted to tarot cards, because I can feel them. But if you have this psychic ability, you may have really strong empathy skills. You may be able to sense things in the environment because of the way your body reacts. Some people are able to have psychic smell, psychic taste, those sort of things as well. But let's go ahead and go to your reading. We're going to start by pulling three tarot cards, or anything else you need to know about your psychic ability. What do you need to know about this feeling psychic ability? The first card is the World. So while you have a very materialistic psychic ability, when I determined the tarot correspondences for this particular ability, I did not choose the Earth suit or the Pentacle suit. I actually chose the Wand suit. And that is because it is something that you feel within you. It is very energetic. And so, one thing to understand is that your psychic ability isn't out in the world, it is actually within you. It is your inner strength, your inner vitality. The next card is the Magician. This is the spiritual concept of as above, so below, but here this is reversed, and that is an indication that your particular psychic ability is very, very within you instead of being without you, right? Instead of being out in the world. And so, really getting in touch with yourself, being very introspective, is going to help you get in touch with this psychic ability. It's not something that you learn from a religion or you really learn from other people or even the environment. It is something that you sense within yourself. You need to experience things in order to improve this ability. The next card is the Knight of Swords. This is being a little bit unprepared and impulsive. You are going to best be able to use this ability in the moment or in a particular situation because you need to feel things in order for it to happen. For tarot, for example, I know the meanings of the cards, but I didn't start getting better at tarot until I started actually reading and experiencing the readings through the psychic touch that I experience when I do the readings. And so this is going to be difficult for you to accept at first, but just because you read books, just because you know things, doesn't mean that you are using your psychic ability. You have to go out and experience things. For example, I have no ability to sense ghosts or anything like that. I could develop this ability, especially as someone with clairsentience, by going to haunted locations or places with a lot of human spirits and then feeling that energy and then working with that energy. But I have no desire to do that, so I will never get better at that particular expression of this psychic ability. And so if there is a particular way that you want to use this ability, no amount of reading, no amount of courses is actually going to make the difference. You have to experience this psychic ability in order to understand how it applies to yourself because it is so much within your body, so much within the moment, the experience you are having. So you will likely find that your strongest ability when it comes to this is going to be empathy. And that's partly because we tend to spend a lot of time with other people, even if we're introverted. And you may have been someone who felt pressured to guide other people to really manage their emotions. They didn't seem to care about your emotions. A lot of people with this ability kind of go numb as they get older or start cutting off social relationships because they are so exhausted. And I think that can happen sometimes with this psychic ability, whether it is empathy or any other way that you apply it. If you don't practice it, if you don't take breaks, you will just choose to cut yourself off from that sensation altogether because you are overwhelmed. This is a psychic ability where you can get overwhelmed very easily. So let's pull two cards from the Work Your Life Oracle deck for the best way for you to use this ability in your life. Spirit, what is the best way for pile 2 to use their ability? What can they do to apply their gift? Your first card is Share Your Voice, Come Out of the Cave, Persecution Expression. So when you use your gift, you are expelling it out of your body. You are feeling it, you are experiencing it. But when you share those feelings with other people, or when you express it in art, you are making it tangible and you are separating it from yourself. This is actually, in a sense, a spiritual ritual or a magic spell. This is the reason why when someone is feeling intense emotions, if they share what they're feeling with another person, they tend to feel relief. And your feeling abilities, your empathy abilities, is you taking on the emotions of others. They are transferring it from them to you, but you can do the same thing. You don't have to really persecute other people with your feelings. Instead, I really encourage you to find some way to express yourself in a healthy way. And there's going to be some sensation involved. It could be something that's athletic. You could express yourself, express your anger, for example, with boxing, or you could express your feelings in art. One thing I like to do is write, and one of the reasons why I like writing is tapping the keyboard. I just really like that. I love it, actually. I love writing. That's one of the top reasons I love writing is I get to tap the keyboard. It is very, very soothing for me. And so you need to find some way to express yourself, either with another person, maybe a therapist, or in a creative way. I think creative is best because you can expel those feelings that you're having into a tangible form that lasts long after you have experienced those emotions. You can revisit it months later. Journaling is a good example. There's just a lot of opportunities here. And you'll also find that when you express yourself this way, you can imbue your artistic creations with some sort of spiritual element. Tarot is like this, right? The cards themselves have this spiritual quality to them because the artist, the original artist of tarot, which I think was Pamela Coleman Smith, she actually came up with a lot of the illustrations. The author of the tarot, Arthur Edward Waite, I think he gave some direction for the major arcana like this, but she came up with the illustrations for a lot of the other cards, and that came from her own spiritual experiences that she expressed, and people are able to look at the cards and feel that spiritual energy. So understand that you can actually imbue spiritual power in the creative things you make, and that could be really exciting. If you don't feel especially creative, you can charge objects, talismans, spells, like little written spells or anything like that with that energy as well. You don't have to be technically creative. You can just transfer your energy if that's something you want to do. But I really encourage you to use that particular expression ability because you are just wound tight with all of these feelings and you need to let it out. Otherwise, you are going to feel stressed, you're going to feel overwhelmed, and you may break before you bend. So the second card here for how you can work your light is Priestess. How are you being called to step up and lead? So anyone who has a psychic ability, everyone has some psychic ability, but if you are able to recognize your psychic ability and you want to improve it, you need to recognize that you have been given this gift for a reason. So why were you given this particular ability to feel things? You were likely given this gift because you feel strong emotions, but you also want to help other people feel strong emotions. That's one of the reasons why I was attracted to tarot, because I can help people feel things through the readings. I can guide them in that way. But for creativity, for writing example, I can help people feel things through my poetry. I could write stories that express ideas that I felt in my body, all those sort of things. I could express that. Romance writers probably have clairsentience because they want people to feel romance, for example. They want them to feel passion. And so the mood, the feeling you get from a creative work is this particular psychic gift at work, and you are meant to share that because you are meant to have people feel that emotion. So Also really think what particular emotion you want people to feel. I want people to feel certain. I want people to feel safe. I want people to feel like they're clear in what they're doing. That way they're not confused. I don't like feeling confused. I don't want other people to feel confused. And so that's what I'm trying to do when I infuse my energy into work. So really after this reading, or if you want to right now, you can pause. Think about the emotions you want other people to feel when you express yourself. Now let's pull 3 cards from the Wisdom of the Oracle deck for other things you need to know. Spirit, what would you like pile 2 to know about their ability? Chop wood. It's a responsible psychic ability, and that makes sense because it's very social in a way that I think the other psychic abilities are not. And I do find that a lot of people with this psychic ability are ironically very introverted. They tend to be reserved, and even when they are extroverted or they're dealing with other people, they do tend to need time to decompress and process emotions. But Chopwood in particular is about responsibilities. Because you are so easily overwhelmed, it is possible that other areas of your life may malfunction or fall to the wayside, and you need to figure out how to balance your psychic ability with practical needs in your life. Because I think you, more than anyone else, is likely to let it get a little bit chaotic. The second card is co-create, and I'm really drawn to the cheetah here. They're my favorite animal other than humans and house cats. Co-create means creating something with destiny, with fate, with the universe, with spirit, trusting that there is some fated element, but then co-authoring that, putting an influence on that, putting your preference on that. And I think it's partly because you have this desire to express yourself, that you are an individual. You are very purposeful. You have a lot of free will, and you don't like being told what to do. And again, this may be why some of you feel frustrated with your psychic ability, and sometimes you wish you didn't have it. You may consider yourself a light worker and really exhausted by the energy of other people. And that is because you are feeling like you have no control over your life. So you need to assert yourself. You need to consider, how are you going to change your destiny to be what you like the best? So imagine that Daniel he's an empath, and he knows that his fate partly is to be a therapist, but he is really burdened by people with mental illnesses. He doesn't know how he can help them because it just triggers him, and he's like, how am I going to use this ability to empathize with other people? Well, he could become a therapist or someone who works in businesses and helps people who aren't necessarily dealing with any mental illnesses but need to do their job better. And so he can look at what he's being asked to do and tell spirit, you know what, that's a good idea, but let me do it this way. So that's what you need to do with your life. You need to look at what the universe is asking you to do and then say, okay, that's great, but I want to do it this way. Accept some element of what you feel fated to do needs to manifest in your life, but you absolutely need to assert yourself. You will not feel sane, you will not feel safe, and you will not feel okay unless you are co-creating. The third card here is poise. So I do think that at times it's going to show when you are overwhelmed. And you can sometimes hear this when I talk. I have a bit of a stutter, and there are certain words that I can't say very clearly. I found out today, because I never said it out loud, clairsentience, I struggle to say, and it really makes me unnerved to say it right now in this video, but you need to practice poise. For example, in high school, when I developed that stutter, I practiced every day in the mirror for 5 to 10 minutes to overcome the worst of my stutter, and I did improve. I also learned how to empathize with other people, but also put up walls to protect myself. And these are things you have to learn. You have to have boundaries, and you have to figure out a way to perceive yourself when you are overwhelmed, because it's going to show in the way you act, in the way you talk, in the way you present yourself. And if you don't look poised, you know that you need to change something. You know you need to take a break. You know you need to decompress. So pay special attention to how you are presenting, because that is a reflection of your inner state, because that is you expressing yourself, expressing how you're feeling in the way that you appear in the world. So look in the mirror, take a picture, ask people around you, do you look okay? And then address that. And if everything looks good or mostly looks good, then you know that you are in a good situation right now. So the last thing we're going to do today is pull one card from the Psychic Tarot. 2 cards, actually. We're going to pull 2 cards. Spirit, what else does pile 2 need to know? The first card is Universe. So before I pulled the World card, and this card is the Universe. So part of your feeling, yes, it is reacting to sensations in your environment and you're feeling those sensations, but there's a spiritual element. It's not just your body that is reacting, it is your spirit reacting. And you may react to things in your environment that don't have a physical stimulus. For example, ghost. You may feel that a place is haunted, even though it looks like a normal new house, there's nothing there. But then because you feel it, you investigate, and maybe you find out that someone died in that house the year before. And so there is a spiritual element to your psychic gift. Don't just assume that physical sensations arise from a physical object. It may be a spiritual object that is inducing a physical sensation in your body. The last card is the third eye chakra. So you are able to be psychic in the sense that you can see things in the future. A lot of people with this psychic ability assume that they can only see what is currently present, but because you are interacting with a spiritual element, you may be sensing things that are about ready to arrive, because there's vibrations and things are interacting at far distances. So you may sense, for example, that someone is going to come to your location soon, and you're able to sense that because you are feeling their energy get closer to you. So you are able to see in the future. It probably takes more practice, but that is something you're able to do. But now let me talk about the psychic ability in general. So this psychic ability is something that obviously occurs in your body. You are able to people read. You're able to feel energy. You are able to also use pendulums because you can feel the pendulum. You can touch objects and feel things from those objects, feel messages. Reiki is a good example. That's another example. That's something I discovered recently that I really resonated with. I never thought I would. Candle flames are another good thing. Not so much looking at the candle flame, but if you were to scry fire, you would probably feel a lot of the message in the warmth as you get close to it. But be very careful with something like that. I don't want you to burn yourself. Tarot. With tarot, you are going to feel the messages when you touch the cards. You may also obviously be able to read by sight and sometimes hear messages. That's normal too, but a lot of what you get comes from touching the cards, shuffling the cards, building that relationship with the cards. You're going to feel it in your body. You may have, everyone tends to think differently. Some people think in words and images. You may, a lot of the times, think in feelings. You may be able to think in the other ways as well, but sometimes you just feel things. Like those are the way that you experience thoughts before you tell yourself you should think in words. I've noticed some people are like that. That could be you. But otherwise, pile two, that is what I have for you today. Like me, you share this psychic gift of clairsentience. And if you resonated with this reading, be sure to like and subscribe for more. You can also book a private tarot reading with me in the description. The link is there. But otherwise, pile two, I am sending you so many blessings. Remember to treat yourself well. You need to treat your body like a temple because that is where your psychic gift resides. Hello, pile three, my hanged man pile. Welcome to your reading. Your psychic ability is clairvoyance, and this is the ability to see things using your psychic power. You see visions, images in your mind. When you look at things, you are able to get psychic perceptions, and this is a great gift. Let's get into it a little bit more. We're going to first start by pulling 3 cards from the Fountain Tarot to see what you need to know about your gift. Spirit, what does pile 3 need to know about their clairvoyance? What is helpful for them to know? Your first card is the 5 of Cups reversed. So you may struggle to accept some of the things you see because what you see isn't what other people see. You may even see supernatural beings or activity, and when you tell other people about it, they say you're crazy or they say that they didn't see this, and this could cause you to feel worried or uncertain or even doubt yourself, but you are seeing what you think you're seeing. The second card is the Chariot reversed. So you have not been able to improve your ability. Just because you're looking at things and you're receiving messages doesn't mean you're improving. It requires deliberate practice. We all have experienced, especially if you live in a country with a lot of cars, people who drive every single day of their life and they're still terrible drivers. So just because you have this psychic ability, just because you are seeing things, doesn't mean you're getting better. And the truth is that you can actually use your psychic gift to a point that is far more useful than what you're experiencing now. And that's something I want you to do. I want you to realize that this isn't the limit of what you're capable of. You are actually way more competent and gifted than you realize. You just need to really finesse your skill a little bit. The third card is the 2 of Cups. I think it would really benefit you to do 2 things. The first is that I think it would help for you to meet with someone who also has this gift. That way you could see what they're seeing and you could talk about the differences. You would probably especially benefit from something like ghost hunting or even reading tarot with someone and then describing what you're seeing when you look at the cards and then comparing and contrasting. You could really learn a lot from that. But another message that I just got when I was looking at these 2 cups is you should do water scrying. Now this is very difficult apparently, but this could actually just be a sign that you should do scrying in general. But this is where you are able to see messages using divination. Tea leaves, looking at clouds, looking for omens, but it's a very visual element. And I want you to do something that requires you to look in order to perceive divinatory messages. It'd be another great way to improve your ability if you're afraid of ghosts, for example, or you just want something that is a little bit more in your control. So definitely take up scrying. Water scrying's an example. Looking at I always forget what it's called, but the seeing glass that some psychics use, the fortune ball. You could also look into flames, but it's a visual thing. You need to be looking and perceiving and perhaps writing down what you're seeing, and then really improve that way. Something like astrology wouldn't be as good because that's not so much about seeing. It's about just knowing things or memorizing things. For you, it's not about memorizing. And for something like tarot, it wouldn't really be about memorizing the cards. It would be about looking at the card itself and then seeing the story. For example, the Hanged Man, your card that drew you to this message today, references, well, most people think it references Odin and the story of him sacrificing himself to receive enlightenment. You are more likely to feel comfortable doing tarot by looking at the card itself. Maybe in a reading for love, you would look at the card and you would think, wow, the person I'm reading for really feels as if they're falling for love because the person's falling from the sky, something like that. So you may sometimes have non-standard interpretations because you are looking at images and receiving messages that way. Let's pull 2 more cards from this deck. What do you need to know? We have the 7 of Coins reversed, which is about not investing in the future. And this is a sign that you shouldn't be too concerned about where your psychic gift is going. Yes, you need to be improving, and there is this desire for you to visualize that growth, but I think you may be tempted to create a vision for yourself when it comes to your abilities that actually doesn't matter. And I also think this is a sign that you may be really good at looking into the past and perceiving the past and perhaps having visions of the past. The next card is Justice reversed. You are able to perceive good and evil by looking at things. You're probably a good judge of character, and if you can look at a situation, if you can look at the people involved, you're going to be able to arrive at a conclusion. So sometimes your first impressions are the right impressions, but you have to feel a spiritual element when it comes to that. It's what comes with practice. So let's pull 2 cards from the Work Your Light Oracle deck to figure out how you can apply your spiritual gift. Spirit, how can pile 3 apply their spiritual gift? What do they need to do? So we have the initiation, rite of passage, crossing the threshold. In particular, I see a portal. In nature, people can experience awe, and awe is the spiritual experience people have when they see something wonderful. It could be a beautiful waterfall, it could be a magnificent tree, it could be a rainbow, but you need to do some sort of rite of passage where you go to an awe-inspiring place or you go and look for a sign in nature. And it could be something as simple as a bird that flies over you, or it could be something that you know you're going to see for certain, like going to the Grand Canyon or some sort of mountain and then having that experience. But you need to witness something with your eyes, and this will be the way that you can mark you truly accepting your spiritual gift. So you need that initiation for yourself. So plan one today for whatever is accessible to you, and then really see that as the turning point between your current abilities to use your clairvoyance to your improvement, because you're not improving right now, but you're going to have amazing improvement after this initiation. Your next card is the Great Gathering. It's all coming together. Intuitive hits, Soul Tribe. You're going to I really get the sense that you are going to benefit from some sort of social atmosphere. And I do think that is because you can really talk about what you see. I think sometimes what you see is personal to you, but sometimes what you see are symbols. And you need to share those symbols and those archetypes with other people so you can understand them. And part of that is interpretation. Dreams, for example. Some of the things that you see in a dream are very personal to you, but other things you see are cultural. And talking with other people about these symbols will help you to understand what they mean. And so I do think reading symbol like dictionaries, dream dictionaries, all those sort of things would be especially helpful for you. Let's pull one card from the Wisdom of the Oracle. 3 cards. What 3 cards do you need from this deck? The first card is Message in a Bottle. You are going to receive a message soon. It's going to be a visual message, obviously, but it's going to be a spiritual message that is going to be important. This is like a one-time thing. You may receive other things in the future, but in particular, for you watching this reading right now, you are going to receive a specific message. All that glitters. It's going to be about something positive, but this also has something hidden within it. So all that glitters is not gold. You're going to receive a message that on the surface is positive, and maybe there is a positive element to it, but there's something underneath that message. It makes me think of dreams. Sometimes we have a dream and a really positive image actually has some sort of dark undercurrent, which is why it's important to understand symbols. And be careful, if you aren't from an English-speaking country or a Western country, don't just look up symbols for dreams on the internet in English, because you'll get those symbols for my culture rather than your culture. So just be aware of that. They can be different. If you do speak a different language other than English, or you're not from the West, consider looking for one in your native country, in your native language. The third card is a change in the wind. So this message you're going to receive that has a hidden meaning is going to talk about a change. Now let's end your reading with 2 final messages from the Psychic Tarot. We'll leave it up to Spirit for what these cards are going to be. Spirit, what else do you want pile 3 to know? The first card is Destiny. And the second card is Transformation. So this message you're going to receive that has a hidden message is something that has to do with your destiny, and it references some sort of change. And what I'm going to do now is pull one more tarot card. I'm not going to give any interpretation of the card. What I want you to do is to pause the reading and really look at the image and think about what comes to mind. Let's shuffle that card. Here's your card. it is the Queen of Swords. Notice that there is a woman behind some geometric shapes. There's some gray colors. There's a lot of gray, but with some orange. She's on some sort of glass plane. So when you are looking at something to interpret it, don't just look at it once. Really try to take apart the different symbols. And if you need to, write down those symbols and what you think they mean, and then interpret the card. So I'm going to be quiet for the next 10 seconds to help you think. All right, those are all the cards I have for you today. I do want to talk a little bit about your psychic gift. So your psychic gift is something that you can use for visions that you have. You may have visions that just come to you, things that you see in your mind. You can use it for dreams, like I mentioned. You can use it for symbols, especially when it comes to divination. You can go into an environment like a bedroom and like look around and interpret it just by things that you see. And there's going to be a spiritual element. It's not just an intellectual interpretation. You don't have to touch the things. You can just look at them. Particular things you could do are visualizations. Your ability to visualize is going to be stronger than most other people's, and you can use that in a spiritual sense to manifest. Dream journaling is very important for you because you may have individual symbols that you need to interpret through your own dreams. Particular divinations you might want to try. Tarot is a very visual thing you can do. Scrying, tea leaves, bibliomancy for some people, but I think for you that would be more if it was like an art book. But that is what I have for you today, pile 3. I hope this was helpful. I hope it enlightened you a little bit. If you resonated with this reading, be sure to like and subscribe for more. You can also go into the description of this video to book a private reading with me, but that is what I have for you today. I am sending you many blessings, and remember, your psychic ability can be so much better than it is today. You just need to practice. Hello, pile 4, my judgment pile. Welcome to your tarot reading. Your psychic ability is clairaudience. This is where you're able to hear things and hear messages. You may also find that words, when you look at words, could also be fairly important to you as well when it comes to your spiritual power. So let's first get started by pulling 3 cards from the Fountain Tarot to learn more about your psychic ability. Spirit, what would you like pile 4 to know about their psychic ability? What is important? The first card is the 8 of Coins. You really need to be precise. There are likely a lot of things you're hearing. There may be a lot of people sending you messages, and you need discernment, which makes me think of the correspondence that I decided on for clairaudience, which is swords, words, thoughts, discernment, and Judgment is also a very discerning card. It is being called to action, and I think it is important that you practice paying attention to what you're listening to and filtering out what doesn't matter, because I think you're going to be able to hear things that you shouldn't pay attention to or you shouldn't hear. And sometimes these messages, you may not feel like it's physically heard, but it comes in your mind as words or messages that you think you heard. The second card is the Fool, but you need to trust some of what you're hearing and just go with it. The good news is that your particular psychic ability works very well with spirit guides, guardian angels, not so much spirit animals, although some people do get messages they can hear from their spirit animals. But You can really improve your psychic ability by working with spirit guides. You can hear their messages clearly over the messages of other spiritual beings. The third card is the Queen of Wands. You have something to say. Some who chose this pile may actually be a medium, but if you're not a medium, what this card is indicating is that what you hear sometimes needs to be shared with others. You may feel a drive to express this either through some sort of creativity or in sharing your spiritual gift with others. Again, that strong relationship with spirit guides. I think that you may be more spiritual than the average person, and part of that is just you are able to access your spiritual gift in a much better way that is clearer and more accessible. Let's pull 2 more cards here. Spirit, what else do you want pile 4 to know? What is important about their clairaudience? You may also have a really strong inner voice, and while this isn't always a message you're receiving, it could be your higher self sending you messages through your inner knowing. But this inner knowing isn't automatic, it's something you hear or something you see in words in your mind. The next card is the 8 of Wands reverse. Things are slowing down. As you get older, I do think that you are going to find that your spiritual strength weakens. And I think that's a weird thing I'm feeling right now, but I think part of the reason why is you are so attuned to hearing and focusing on what you hear that you may create a spiritual connection to your ears that as you get normal hearing loss, even if you don't go completely deaf, you may find that your ability to perceive psychic messages go down. So I do think it is important that you really develop this gift to be disembodied from the actual physical sensation of hearing and try to develop the ability to receive those messages purely through thought or through words that you see in your mind's eye. The next card is the 2 of Swords, indecision. You don't always know what to do with the messages you receive. And I think you probably receive more messages than you know what to do with. And so I think, again, your spirit guide, you need to have at least one spirit guide. You can have more than one spirit guide that you're working with, but you need at least one spirit guide who you communicate with, who you have a relationship with, who can help you filter messages and protect you. So if there is a spiritual being trying to send you a harmful message, or what they're sending is just noise and it's not relevant to you, then your spirit guide can help put up a barrier to keep them out. So let's pull 2 cards from the Work Your Light Oracle deck to figure out how you can work this gift into your ordinary life. Spirit, how can pile 4 work this gift into their life? What can they do? And you may wonder why it seems like you have the potential to be so skilled, because it seems like you have an unfair advantage to the other psychic abilities, but that is because your psychic gift is so tied to language. And language is a very advanced, higher order spiritual essence, and so you have a higher order gift than the other clairs. It's not that those can't also be powerful, but yours is somehow more human, more custom, more personal, and because of that, it is more accessible and you're able to get a lot better than the other clairs, in my opinion. The first card is no. Wait, postpone, pause, say no. You have the right to say no to messages you receive because, especially if you're a medium, you may have spirits trying to send you messages, trying to use you to get work done, trying to push you to act, but you can just say absolutely no. Even if you don't have a spirit guide that you're directly working with right now to protect your boundaries, you can just, when you hear a message, you can either say out loud or in your mind say, nope, I'm not going to attend to that. That is perfectly fine. And I'm feeling pretty sassy right now. You should have a little bit of an attitude, I think. You need to be able to protect yourself when it comes to your energy. The second card is you're already doing it. Stop overthinking. Keep facing your true north. So you're already using this. You may be using it in ways that you don't realize. You may be especially spiritual, but what I want you to realize is that keep using your gift, but when it says keep facing your true north, consider how you can use it in your everyday life. Let's use an example. Let's say that Jose has clairaudience as well, but he doesn't want to do any sort of spiritual job. He doesn't want to be a medium or anything like that. All he really wants to do is be a lawyer. And so he goes to law school and he uses his clairaudience when he is listening to oral arguments to figure out the intentions and true nature of the people he's listening to. And it really helps him formulate and react to arguments in the courtroom or outside the courtroom when he's preparing his case. That way he can really make the most of his gift. And that's one thing to consider. Because this is such a language heavy gift, you can apply it in any skilled capacity in the human world. Let's use a physical job as an example. Let's say that Rebecca has a job as a cashier. She could use her clairaudience to hear messages from her spirit guide about what a difficult customer truly wants. So whatever you choose to do in your life, you can hear those messages to make it easier for yourself and to help other people. Let's pull 3 cards from the Wisdom of the Oracle. How else can you use this gift? How can you use this? You know, now that I think about it, a lot of the people that I have noticed do have strong clairaudience abilities do tend to be a little bit sassy, and I think that is just something that comes with it. Either they themselves are sassy or they deal with really sassy spirits, and I think there's a little bit of comfort there because of that strong connection. Your first card here is mending. You can really heal relationships. Because you are able to communicate with spirits through language, you are able to understand things at a level many other psychics can't, because you can use it in your own words and you can understand it in abstractions that humans actually understand. For example, I am clairsentient, and that means I learn things by touch. And my thoughts, although I can think in words, I naturally think in feelings. And this requires me to translate my feelings into words. But you already think in words, or you're comfortable, very comfortable in words if it's not your first way of thinking. And so because of that, you're able to twist ideas in your mind and analyze it in a way other people can't. And this means that you can address issues at a higher level. You can communicate with clarity, and that's a really important gift. The second card is higher power. Again, a really ascended power. You are able to communicate with higher forces. So go ahead and speak with spirit guides. That's wonderful, but you may be able to speak with spirit guides that aren't personal to you. A lot of people only really want to speak to their guardian angel, maybe a spirit guide or an ancestor, but you could perhaps speak with something that has a stronger spiritual ability than yourself, that is on a higher plane. Maybe some people say they speak with aliens, some people say that they speak with gods. Maybe you have a clear line of communication. The third card is Observer. So I think you may be able to listen to white noise or those machines that people use for ghosts, and you're going to be able to pick up things without having some sort of translator do it for you. So you could listen to music, you could go out into nature, and you're going to hear things. You're going to be able to interpret them in ways that other people can't. People are going to say they didn't hear that, that was just chaos, but to you, you're going to know exactly what it says. So that's one way I want you to practice, is to maybe get a white noise machine or list a white noise machine, something that plays white noise, and then just have a piece of paper and write down whatever comes to mind as you're listening to that, because you're going to start picking out words, and it may not be physically in the room with you, but you're going to get that inner message. That is a great way to practice. I want you to try that. Now, the last thing I want to do today is pull 4 cards from the Psychic Tarot. I don't know why 4, but that's what I'm feeling. What 4 cards do you need to know from this deck? What is important? The first card is Sacrifice. So some of your time is going to be spent doing your gift. We have all seen those movies of mediums or people who are psychic, and then they have to tend to things. They have to help people out. And yes, you can say no, but you're going to feel pressured to sacrifice at least some of your time to help other people or to help spiritual beings. And you might want to consider doing so. It'll really help improve your ability. You'll feel really good about yourself because you're basically volunteering, and volunteering makes someone happy. But definitely help out other people when you get messages, at least some of the time. Don't be entirely self-interested. People and spirits may be coming to you for a reason, and you may be the only one that can help them. The second card is Harmony. I think your voice is powerful. You're able to really convince people and persuade people at a level beyond simply being charismatic or having clear speech. It is something that is conveyed energetically and spiritually when you speak. And you may be able to notice this when you use it, but the more you practice, the more it's going to work. And you're going to find that your voice carries power, whether it is in a crowded room or with someone you love, but it can really mend relationships. It can really bring people back to you. The third card is Light. You are a light worker. You are able to do good. Oh, and I think also you may be able to hear auras or hear things that are visual. You know how some people, when they hear words, they see colors and stuff like that? Some who chose this pile may have that. And then the final card today is Financial and Material Changes. You are able to use your gift for financial support. So you could likely be a psychic for hire. You could be a tarot reader. You could be a medium. It's not something you have to do. You could do it part-time if you wanted to, but it is something you could do, and it's something you should consider because you have such a highly skilled and competent ability that you can really refine to an insanely amazing level. So the last thing I want to talk about today is just your psychic gift in general. So clairaudience, obviously it is activated through your inner voice, messages you hear. I also think you can sometimes see it in words as well, but specific ways that you can activate it or use it is journaling, answering prompts, giving your own prompts to yourself, automatic writing, which is kind of what I was talking about with the white noise machine. Tarot, you'll notice tarot readers who have clairaudience will say that they hear a message. That's probably going to be how you interface with tarot. You could also use EVP, spirit boxes, mantras, scripting. Anything in the new thought space is going to be really good for you, not just as like a divination thing, but as a way you can interface with spirituality and manifest things. So definitely look into that. Scripting, mantras, all those sort of things. If you find the new thought videos like manifestation is a little bit shallow on YouTube, look at the older books. That's what they're drawing from. You may find that especially good. And one particular thing you might really like is bibliomancy. This is where you shuffle through a book and you land on a random page, and then that's a message, right? That's a language message that you may hear in your mind that will trigger something for you psychically. So that's something you can also try. But otherwise, pile 4, that is what I have for you today. If you resonated with this reading, be sure to like and subscribe for more. You can also go into the description of this video for a link to book a private tarot reading with me. But otherwise, that is what I have for you today, and I am sending you many blessings.